Hello and welcome to my little corner of the internet where we love to talk about nature stuff. This video is a little bit different to my usual vlogs where I'm gallivanting out in the forest and obsessing over mushrooms and, frolicking and that sort of stuff. But yeah, today I wanted to talk about some herbs that have been calling to me recently as we have come into this glorious summertime. So if you are interested in the medicinal and magical aspects of herbs, then stick around because I will be making more herbalism based videos. But first, before I get stuck in, I just want to talk about this for a minute. I have partnered with Wild, who are an eco-conscious brand that offer refillable aluminium-free deodorant and other toiletries such as body wash and lip balm. I personally stopped using antiperspirant with aluminium in over 7 years ago now because it's not good for us and we should be sweating anyway. It's a natural thing. And since then I have tried various different natural based deodorants, so roll-ons, balms, sprays, and for the last 2 weeks I have been trying this one. TMI, I'm a really sweaty person and I am actually impressed with this product's ability to keep me feeling fresh and also smelling good for the whole day as well. Because in full honesty, nothing has been able to provide me with that so far. My favourite thing about Wild is actually the selection of cute cases that you get to choose from. And all the formulas are certified vegan and cruelty free. And Wild also offer a flexible subscription service. So you can get all your refills delivered to your door and you can pause or cancel it at any time and switch up your scents whenever you want. I also want to add that the lip balm formula is actually really nice. I'm quite fussy when it comes to lip balms and I have multiple lip balms in my collection and this one is just it. And for the refillable deodorants, they offer a sensitive range as well. But I'm quite sensitive myself and I've been fine just using the normal range. At the moment I'm using cotton and sea salt and it's really nice. Yes, I do have a discount for you, so 20% off for a limited time. The code is FLORAFUNGA or you can click the link in the description. You could also scan the QR code that's on the screen as well. Alrighty then, I shall crack on now and talk about some herbal magic. First herb up is Mugwort or Mugwort, and its Latin name is Artemisia vulgaris, and Artemisia comes from Artemis, the Greek goddess, and vulgaris means common. And I would say it is pretty common. Like once you locate some, it's very abundant in that particular area and you'll find it along most riversides and even in countryside lanes. So I'd say where I find it in the countryside, there is probably a water source nearby that's dried up. Because it does like to grow near water, but you'll have the most luck probably if you go along a river's edge and you should find some. Once you do find some, you could seed some in your garden or allotment space and it would be a lot more convenient that way. But I don't have a garden, so I have to go out into the wilderness and forage for everything that I need in my herbal practice. Just going back to its name relating to Artemis. So Artemis is the goddess that is associated with wild hunting and animals, plants, and the moon, and childbirth as well, and also chastity. Mugwort has a long-standing association with femininity and as a support for the female reproductive system. But it's also used as a stimulating herb for the digestive system and also the liver, and then it is also a soothing herb for the nervous system too. Mugwort is also known as the mother of herbs, and I think this comes from as far back as the Middle Ages. And energetically, it can help people to get back in touch with their feminine side. So if you feel like you've lost touch with your feminine, and this can be an experience for a lot of women going through the menopause, then this is a good herb to use. But it's also useful for both men and women. And that's because feminine energy represents softness and sensitivity and intuition, which is a big one. And that is something that men can benefit from too, not just women. When you Google search Mugwort, the first thing that always comes up is about lucid dreaming. And this can be an effect for some people, but it's not a guaranteed effect for everybody. Most people will generally report from taking Mugwort that they are very calm and relaxed, and it induces like a dreamy, relaxed kind of state. And personally, I'd agree with that. It has a positive impact on my dreams. So where my dreams would normally be like anxiety ridden, they are a lot more positive and fun and whimsical, and I always can recall them really well the next morning too. Mugwort can be used as a topical medicine, which means on top of the body, not ingested. So you can make it into an oil or a balm, and it's antimicrobial, antifungal and anti-inflammatory as well. But generally its best known applications are for menstrual cycle health. Taking mugwort internally, so in the form of a tea for example, can help to bring an irregular cycle back into rhythm, and it can also help to ease painful periods as well. You can also make an infused oil, so you can apply this topically to the womb area, and this can help with the painful cramps. It can also help ease the transition for those going into menopause, so your body obviously has to get used to going from having a cycle to not having a cycle at all, and it can be really helpful with this. An important thing to note about mugwort is that it can stimulate menstruation, so it's not one for pregnant women to be taking. This month my cycle seemed to be running slightly behind. I'm not sure why, because I've been very consistent for the last few years. I always menstruate with the full moon, so I noticed that as I was looking through my calendar. So I started having mugwort tea for a few days, and it did bring my period on, so that's just a tip for you. Speaking of the moon, mugwort is also known as a herb of the moon, and going back to feminine energy, the moon is what influences this. You might have noticed that the underside of the leaves are a silvery white, so if you're ever walking down a country lane or down by the riverside in the moonlight, you might notice the leaves glistening in the light. What is mugwort's association with magic and folklore? Well, it is famous as being one of the 9 herbs in the Anglo-Saxon 9 herbs charm. The 9 herbs charm is an old English healing spell which is recorded in a single manuscript known today as the Lac Nunga, meaning remedies. I think I pronounced that correctly. Like quite a few other herbs, it's also associated with protection against evil spirits, and people would hang it in doorways or windows, or even carry it on their bodies. And people would also make it into a smudge stick, and people still do make it into a smudge stick. So like sage smudging came from South America or something like that. In Britain, we would use mugwort, and I'm sure other herbs too, and people would smudge their homes to clear out any energies and also to protect the space. As I touched on previously, mugwort is known as a dreaming herb, and in terms of magic and witchcraft, mugwort can thin the veil between worlds, allowing messages to come through in the dreaming realm. People will use this herb to enhance their psychic awareness and intuition, and it could help to facilitate astral travel as well. There is definitely a lot to be said on mugwort, and you can go and do your own research. There's a lot to read in books and on the internet, but that was just a brief overview for you. This herb is Yarrow, the herb of the blood. Its Latin name is Achillea millefolium. The word Achillea comes from Achilles, who is known for using yarrow to stem the bleeding of deep wounds during the Trojan War, as depicted in a poem written by Homer, the ancient Greek poet. And millefolium means 1,000-leaved, which is a reference to the very small, detailed, feathery-like leaves that yarrow has, and they are also described as looking like little ferns. You can find yarrow growing in most grassland habitats, but it's most common in wildflower meadows, obviously, and in fields around farmland. But you don't want to be picking any herbs that are right next to a farming field, because obviously the fields get sprayed with chemicals and pesticides and things. And I also quite often see yarrow growing in gardens, so you could even plant your own. The shape of the flowering heads make it look as though it's from the umbellifer family of plants, but it's actually in the daisy family. But given the fact that it does have umbel-shaped flowering heads, means that you would have to be careful when you are identifying it for the first time, just to make sure you're not picking something that you don't want to be picking. So potentially common hogweed could be confused with yarrow, but the leaves are completely different. And there's other flowering plants with umbel-shaped heads that you could get confused with, but as long as you follow all the characteristics, yarrow has very distinctive leaves, so you should be able to identify it pretty confidently. It's the aerial parts of yarrow and also the root that is used for medicinal purposes. Aerial means above ground, so that is referring to the flowers and the leaves and the stem, but usually the stems aren't really used, it's just the flowers and the leaves. Among some of its best medicinal uses include as an anti-inflammatory, an antispasmodic, a diaphoretic, a styptic and a circulatory stimulant. The last two of those might seem contradictory, as a styptic will help to stop bleeding and a circulatory stimulant would increase blood flow. Obviously, as a styptic, it would be applied topically to a cut or a wound. So you could mash up the leaves to make a fresh poultice and then apply it directly. And then taking it internally in the form of a tea or a tincture is what would have the circulatory stimulant effect. In this way, it works on the peripheral circulation, which refers to the extremities, so the hands, arms, legs and feet. And as far as I know, there is not yet a scientific explanation on how yarrow can have both of these properties at the same time. But professional herbalists will vouch for both of these uses, and it's documented in a lot of herbal books. So yeah, when taken internally, yarrow is associated with getting the blood moving and helping to remove congestion. This is why it's a good herb to take if you are experiencing like a painful, thick or congested type menstruation. Another example for yarrow's use as a circulatory stimulant is where people are using it for Raynaud's syndrome, so it's helping to get that circulation and heat back into their hands and feet. Regarding magic and folklore, yarrow has got itself a pretty extensive reputation spanning across various parts of the world. Here's a quick cool fact. So a fascinating discovery was made where plant starch from yarrow and a few other plant species, I think, was found in the tartar of Neanderthal teeth. And these teeth were like 50,000 years old, which is crazy and indicates how far back our ancestors were actually making use of medicinal plants. Like mugwort, yarrow has associations with spirituality and protection. But not all of this plant's associations have been positive. It has had a bit of a bad rap in some parts of Europe at some point in history, where it was known as the witch's herb, but not in the good witch kind of way. And it's also been called the devil's nettle because it was believed to have been used for evil spells. So yeah, depending on which cultural folklore you read into, yarrow has good and evil associations. On the positive side of things, the general theme is that yarrow is a herb of protection and was also used by girls and ladies for attracting their partner or one true love. I did read about one tradition that comes from somewhere in the British Isles, and it says how the seeker should sew an ounce of yarrow in a flannel and place it under their pillow before going to sleep. And after having repeated the following words, they should have a vision of their future spouse. Those words being, "Thou pretty herb of Venus's tree, thy true name it is yarrow. Now who my bosom friend must be, pray tell thou me tomorrow." I mean, if you're starting to get desperate and the Tinder dates are not going well, then it's worth a shot, isn't it? So there we are. That is a little bit about yarrow. Again, there's lots more to know, but I can't sit here all day and tell you everything. You got to use your own brain and time for that. But yeah, just remember next time you make a love potion to include some yarrow. Final herb is St. John's wort. Its Latin name is Hypericum perforatum, and this is the one that is most commonly used in herbal medicine. Though there are a few other related species, but this is the main one. Hypericum comes from a Greek meaning of above picture, and this is because people used to hang the plant above pictures or portraits to ward off evil spirits. And perforatum is a reference to the translucent dots on the leaves that look like little perforations. Back in the Middle Ages, this was prescribed as a psychological remedy because back then it was believed that evil spirits were the cause of various health issues. It's the aerial parts of this plant that are medicinal, so the flowers, the flower buds and the leaves are what is used. And it has a pretty long list of physical actions, so it's an expectorant, it's antiseptic, anti-inflammatory, antiviral, antispasmodic, and is used as a mild antidepressant as well. And there's a few other things as well that I probably haven't named. One of its best applications is as an expectorant, so it is very effective at helping the body to remove lots of mucus or phlegm. Its antiseptic and astringent properties make it a really good herb for helping to heal wounds, and this can work in two different ways. So taken internally, it can help with peptic ulcers, for example, or when applied topically, it would help cuts, scratches and burns, and even insect bites. You might have seen people making St. John's wort oil, and it comes out a bright red, and that oil is a really good topical pain reliever. Its antiviral properties are noted as being effective against shingles and cold sores, so that's another example of where you could use the oil. Aside from the topical pain relief and skin soothing properties, People are also drawn to St. John's wort for its mild antidepressant effects. This is probably one of the most well-studied herbs, and this is why you can buy it as a herbal supplement in some supermarkets and stores like Holland & Barrett. I remember seeing this once in Tesco's in the form of tablets. It was discovered that St. John's wort acts as a natural serotonin reuptake inhibitor, and so this then sparked a lot of research on it. And as a result of the research, there is a list of contraindications, meaning that it can interact with other medications and things. So the general advice goes that if you are someone who has a medical condition or is taking regular medications, then ideally you should consult with a health professional before you introduce herbs and mushrooms into your diet, because like with St. John's wort, there are known contraindications, but with other herbs and mushrooms there aren't so many known contraindications. But there are still some, so you do need to be careful with them. So there's a good few ways that this can be used, so in a tincture, a tea, capsule, or as a topical oil, like I said. As I mentioned with the contraindications, you do need to be a lot more cautious when taking it internally. And something to note when applying it topically is that it can cause photosensitivity in some people. So if you are treating an area with the oil, then you might want to put sun cream on as well. St. John's wort is traditionally known to protect against thunderbolts, fire and evil spirits. You notice there's a common theme going on with herbs and evil spirits. People used to rely heavily on plants for the protection of evil energies and bad influences. St. John's wort is strongly associated with the summer solstice, with its little bright yellow flowers representing the sun. For a lot of people, the colour yellow naturally resembles like happiness and optimism and energy. And so in magical practice, it's used to dispel negativity and ward off any harmful entities. According to some folklore, neither the devil nor demons could be in the same room as someone wearing St. John's wort. And this is why people would hang it above picture frames and even in mirrors too. It was also used much like a smudge stick in order to purify rooms and big spaces. And in midsummer, when people would have bonfires, they would toss bits of St. John's wort into the fire and then jump through the burning smoke to protect themselves from evil. So there you go. There is 3 important herbs to know and collect in the summertime. I'm only just starting to see the yarrow coming out properly now, whereas the St. John's wort was probably at its peak in June around the summer solstice. But it can continue to flower up until September, I think. And the mugwort is starting to flower too, but you can continue to collect the leaves. So there is still time to collect your herbs. Final note before I go running off looking for mushrooms. I just want to point out that plants are living things and they carry a life force energy, just as people and animals and fungi do. So that means that they do need to be treated with respect. But we can touch more on that in another video. Many thanks for your viewing of this video. Have a blessed day.